Here's what nobody tells you about turning 50. Most retirement advice was written for people who started saving at 25. If that's not you, you've probably felt it. That quiet panic when you check your accounts, that sinking feeling that you're already too late. But here's the thing, you're not too late. You're just playing by rules that were never designed for your specific situation. The game changed, but nobody updated the playbook for you. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what actually works when you're starting later than planned. The math can still work. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. The median American between 55 and 64 has about $185,000 saved for retirement. Sounds okay until you do the math. Financial advisors typically say you need 10 to 12 times your annual income saved by retirement. For someone earning $70,000 a year, that's $700,000 minimum. Most people aren't even close. And here's the thing. That gap isn't because you made terrible decisions, it's because the math was built for a world that stopped existing decades ago. Think about it. The traditional retirement model assumed three things. You'd work for one company for 30 years and get a pension. Healthcare would be affordable, and you could start saving seriously in your 30s because wages would keep up with inflation. None of that held true. Pensions went extinct. Healthcare costs now represent the single largest expense in retirement. And real wages for most Americans have been essentially flat since the 1970s. So you were handed a blueprint for a house that no longer exists. And when you couldn't build it, you assumed you were the problem. That's not an accident. That's by design. The financial industry benefits when you blame yourself. Confuse people by more products. Here's where it gets worse. Compound interest, which everyone calls the eighth wonder of the world, has a dark side nobody mentions. It works spectacularly when you're young and have decades ahead, but when you're in your 50s, the math flips against you. Every year you didn't save in your 30s cost you more than a year you save now. So that $10,000 invested at 25 becomes roughly $200,000 by 65 at average market returns. That same $10,000 invested at 55 becomes maybe $20,000. Time is the multiplier and you have less of it. That's the penalty nobody talks about, honestly. So what do most people do when they realize this? They follow the conventional advice, and almost all of it is dangerously incomplete. Myth number one, just max out your catch-up contributions. After 50, you can contribute an extra $7,500 to your 401k annually. Sounds helpful. But here's the catch. Even maxing out at $30,500 per year for 15 years, assuming 7% returns, gets you roughly $800,000. That's decent. But most people in their 50s can't actually afford to max out. They're paying for kids' college, supporting aging parents, dealing with the most expensive decade of their lives. The advice assumes resources you may not have. Myth number two, I'll just work until 70. This is the most dangerous assumption of all. Nearly 40% of retirements are forced, not chosen. Health problems, layoffs, ageism in hiring, the company you thought was stable disappearing. You can plan to work until 70, but the labor market may have other plans. Building your entire strategy around something you can't control is not a strategy. It's a gamble. Myth number three, I'll downsize and live cheaply. People assume they can sell the house, move somewhere inexpensive, and stretch their savings. Sometimes that works, but often it doesn't account for the real costs. Moving away from your support network means paying for help you used to get for free. Rural areas with lower housing costs often have higher healthcare costs and fewer services. And downsizing frequently triggers unexpected expenses, repairs to sell the old place, moving costs, furnishing the new one. The fantasy version is always cheaper than the reality. Here's what's really happening. These myths persist because they're comfortable. They let you feel like you have a plan without actually confronting the math. And the financial industry loves them because each one involves buying something. Retirement accounts, insurance products, real estate transactions, they profit whether the advice works for you or not. The psychological trap runs even deeper. By your 50s, your identity is wrapped up in your lifestyle, the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the vacations you take. Scaling back feels like failure, like admitting something went wrong. So people maintain appearances with debt or denial, hoping something will change. But hope is not a financial plan. And denial has compound interest too, just in the wrong direction. So if the standard advice doesn't work, what does? Let me show you what people who actually retire comfortably in their 60s do differently, because the strategies exist. They're just not the ones being marketed to you. The first lever is income extension, but not the way you think. Most people in their 50s who retire well don't just keep working the same job longer. They diversify their income sources before they need to. Consulting, freelancing, monetizing expertise they've built over decades. The goal isn't to work forever, it's to create options so you're not dependent on a single employer who might decide you're too expensive. People who retire comfortably often have 2 or 3 small income streams by their early 60s. None of them huge, but together they reduce the pressure on savings dramatically. The second lever is the expense audit, and this one requires honesty, not cutting lattes. That's a joke. Real expense auditing means examining recurring costs that have crept up over time. Subscriptions you forgot about, insurance policies you haven't compared in years, the house that's too big now that the kids are gone. Most people find 15 to 20% of their spending is pure drift, money leaving their accounts for things that add zero value to their lives. Redirecting that isn't deprivation, it's alignment. The third lever is asset positioning, and timing matters here. In your 30s, aggressive growth makes sense. In your 50s, the math changes. A major market drop at 58 is catastrophic in a way it isn't at 35. People who retire comfortably typically shift toward more stable allocations earlier than conventional advice suggests. They also make hard decisions about home equity. That house isn't just where you live, it's probably your largest asset. Using it strategically, whether through downsizing at the right time or a reverse mortgage later, can completely change your retirement math. The fourth lever is the one most people ignore until it destroys them. Healthcare. Yeah, I say the average 65-year-old couple will spend over $300,000 on healthcare in retirement. That's not a typo. And Medicare doesn't cover everything. Long-term care, dental, vision, hearing, the gaps are enormous. Like, people who retire comfortably plan for healthcare as its own category, not an afterthought. They research supplemental coverage early. They factor in the years between retirement and Medicare eligibility at 65. They understand that healthcare costs alone can sink an otherwise solid plan. Here's what separates people who struggle from people who don't. It's not luck. It's not even starting earlier, though that helps. It's making intentional, sometimes uncomfortable decisions before they become emergencies. Most people wait until they're forced to act. By then, options have narrowed. The people who retire comfortably start repositioning in their early 50s, not their late 60s. Now, let me be clear about something. Knowing all of this doesn't magically fix your situation. You probably won't retire at 55 with millions in the bank. That ship may have sailed, but that was never the real goal anyway. The real goal is freedom from financial anxiety, waking up without that knot in your stomach, having options instead of feeling trapped. And here's what I want you to understand. If you're behind where the charts say you should be, that's not a moral failing. You were navigating a system designed for a different economy. You were doing your best with incomplete information. The blame doesn't belong to you. It belongs to a system that profits from your confusion and calls it personal responsibility. But now, you know. You know the math. You know the myths. You know what actually works, and that changes everything. Because once you understand the game, you can start making different choices. Not perfect choices, different ones. You can stop signaling wealth you don't have. You can stop following advice designed for someone else's life. You can build something that actually fits your reality. That isn't a small thing, that's everything. So now you understand how to actually prepare for retirement in your 50s. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? That's up to you. If you found this useful or want to explore more hidden truths about money and the systems that shape your life, hit subscribe. New videos drop every week, and the next one might be exactly what you need to hear. Thanks for watching.